Good evening. Welcome to the Michael Muse Show, the author of Rise and Burn. And we are here tonight with the coach, author, Melvin Foreman. And you know what? We are talking tonight about best self living. Because one thing about life, a lot of people may breathe, their hearts may beat, but the question is, are they living a life that is of a quality life? And are they living a life that they're giving their best, they're being their best, and they are conquering and achieving things in life? And you know what? Definitely want to thank everyone for coming on tonight. If you're watching on michaelmusenow.com, I want to thank you for coming on because on a Tuesday night, you could be doing anything right now. You could be watching TV, you could be getting ready for bed, but guess what? You choose to be here, and we choose. We thank you. We're appreciative, and definitely, what we have in store for you is going to be well worth the time with us tonight. So, Coach, Author Melvin Foreman, how are you doing this evening, sir?
I'm good. I'm blessed. I'm being my best.
Well, sir, just the fact you said you're being your best says a lot about you, and it says a lot about the energy that you bring to the show tonight. And I appreciate you, sir, because you definitely understand the concept of not just living a life just to be living. And I always say the mode of most people is work, pay taxes, pay bills, and that's a repeat cycle. And we already know what's at the end of that cycle is die. And I definitely hope by the end of this show, people are going to have some golden nuggets, some things that they can look at with their life that they can apply and they can move on. But but author Melvin Foreman, I want to thank you so much for coming on to share this insight. And so the first question I want to ask, just want to start with you. What do you do for a living? And just kind of give us a little background on your upbringing.
Okay. Well, currently, believe it or not, semi-retired. Right now, I'm semi-retired, putting my time and energy into this best self-living project that I started about 4 years ago. Prior to 4 years ago, for 25 plus years, I worked in the city of Detroit as a tennis instructor, coach, director, manager, and then last but not least, the tennis coordinator for the city of Detroit. So my contract spanned over about 25 years. And in 2012, my contract terminated when the city kind of got into some financial challenges and what have you. And so once my contract terminated, there I was, and, 50 something years old, asking myself, what do I do now? And it took me a week or so, but then I realized that I had another chapter in my life to live, and I was going to live it well. And that's how I ended up developing this best self-living program project that I'm currently involved in.
And Arthur Melvin, I want to say that you said something very important there. I want to touch on that real quick. The fact that you said you did something for 25 years, working with the city, teaching tennis, and at a certain point, they were no longer able to pay you to do what you were doing, and you had to make a choice with your life. And you know what, Mr. Arthur Melvin, there are a lot of people right now who are in that situation. They have been in jobs for many, many years, that have downsized, who have said, we no longer need you no more. You need to just retire. And a lot of those people are very discouraged right now because they're like, man, I've dedicated my life to this corporation or to this entity, and I need to know what to do next. And the fact that you were able to put your hand to your dream and to your goals, and now it's like you say, it's now starting to manifest itself. I want to ask you a specific question. From the time you said you was working with the city, until you came up with the concept for best self living. What were some of the mental steps that you had to take to get there? Because I talk to a lot of people who are in that age range, and a lot of people feel like they're lost. They feel useless. They feel don't feel appreciated. So, what was the mental steps you personally took to get from the point where to get to best self living from the time you was no longer with the city?
Well, let me share this. It was an attitude that I had developed long ago before I ever got fired. I think it's important. There was a philosophy or a statement that I picked up years ago, and it said that it is your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude or how high you go in life. And so I've had an attitude that says everything is in divine order for those who believe. And so I believe that when one door closes, another door opens. And so with that type of attitude, I believe that what happens is if you can maintain that type of attitude, what you will find happening is that things will come, doors will open that you hadn't even thought about opening before. And so I realized that as long as I continued to teach tennis, I was spending a small amount of time working on my best self-living program. But once I got laid off, my contract terminated, then I actually had the time to spend focusing on developing that program. Because prior to me getting laid off, what was happening was I was sharing the insight, but I was sharing the insight with a few through my tennis program. And see, everybody doesn't play tennis. Everybody doesn't play tennis. And so I was only able to reach a certain amount of people. But but afterwards, all of a sudden it came to me. I said, wow, you know what? I've been teaching classes. Now I get a chance to reach the masses. So my point is, it's that attitude that got me going and kept me going from one chapter in my life to the other. So attitude is a big thing to have when it comes to living this wonderful life experience that we have. So I say, it's your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude or how high you go in life. And so I just went with it.
And I love what you just said there. You went from teaching classes to now reaching the masses. And so my next question is, how did the concept, if you can, matter of fact, go into the background of your tennis coaching, of how you developed that to even get to the thought process in the first place.
Okay. So I'm a twin. I'm a twin. I got a twin brother, identical twin brother named Marvin. I'm the oldest by 20 minutes. And then I have an older sister, a couple of years older. So it's three of us in the family. My mother raised us. My father passed when I was 4. So my mother was a single parent and she raised the three of us. And so me and my brother, we were real competitive, always into sports and what have you. So I'm in high school and I'm playing football. I'm swimming. My brother's playing baseball and swimming and playing football. And then one day, one of my football buddies, he saw a sign, a flyer up talking about boys tennis. And he said, Foreman, man, let's go beat up on some sissy boys. I'm like, what? Yeah, let's go play some tennis, man. They got tennis tryouts. Let's go beat up on some sissy boys. And I'm like, man, Dungeon, I don't want to beat up on those sissy boys. But guess what? He talked me into it. And so the next day, I actually went out for the tennis tryouts. And so I made the tennis team.
Okay.
And it was fun. It was different. I realized it was a challenging sport that I hadn't played before. And another thing that I liked about it was it was an individual sport. So I had to take responsibility for the success or the failure that I was having on the tennis court. Whereas on football, often at that age, sometime if we didn't do well, we would blame our failures on other people on the team, right? So
Exactly.
I took to the tennis. So I really liked the tennis. However, when I went to college, I went to a small college up in Michigan, and I went to play football initially, but I wasn't getting along with the football coach. But guess what? They had tennis. And so I tried out for the tennis team. I made the tennis team, and tennis got me through college. So fast forward, after I graduated from college, I moved to California, and my degree was in sociology. So I worked for the San Diego Urban League, doing some community service work.
Okay.
And then after that, I was there for 5 years, and I returned to Detroit. So now get this: after I returned to Detroit, there was a point in time in my life where I was working this type of job and working that type of job. But guess what? I was introduced to a workshop called "You Can Have It All," Mike. The title of the workshop was "You Can Have It All,"
You can have it all.
and it was a money mastery workshop. And so, anyway, in this workshop, the guy who facilitated it, he said something that really stuck to me. He said that we all were created with a purpose, right? We all were created with a purpose. And one way to find out what our purpose was for us to get in touch with doing what we truly love to do. And he said it had nothing to do with money, power, position. It's just get in touch with something that truly moves and inspires you to do, something that you would be willing to do without the money, without the power, without the prestige. And so at that point in time, I was sewing seats, I was an artist, I was drawing, I was teaching tennis. And so I was asking myself, oh, what do I really love to do? What do I really love to do? And I chose tennis. I said I really enjoyed teaching tennis. It was something I loved to do. Didn't know how I could make money doing it, but it was something that I loved to do. I picked it, and before you know it, I'm teaching tennis small time, and then before you know it, I'm teaching tennis big time, and then I ended up teaching tennis for the next 25, 30 years.
Mm.
So that's how I got into the tennis, getting in touch with doing what I truly love to do.
And once you get in touch,
Mm-hmm.
doing what you love to do,
Mm-hmm.
at what point in time did you develop the concept of best self living?
Whoa, that was a long time after. Long time after. Best self living actually came after I was laid off. But now, the philosophy of living a wonderful life and a happy life, that started way back when I was about 10 or 11 old, Mike. 10 or 11 years old.
Mm.
Okay,
So
I
what you
grew up. Go ahead.
so what you're saying pretty much what you did as a child, the ideas and seeds that was planted as a child is
Yes.
what was actually birthed out at you many
Yeah,
years later, decades later.
that's exactly what I'm saying. That's
And that's
exactly what I'm saying. I got
and
on a path, and see, and
yes.
that's something that I try and communicate with people. Once I got on that path, see, when you have a dream, right? When you have a dream, nothing like having a dream. And when you're motivated and you're inspired to pursue that dream and have that dream come true, you'll do just about any and everything to make it happen. And so, at the young age of 10 or 11, I grew up, like I said, I grew up on the east side of Detroit in a low income housing project. And I was exposed to a lot of different things, Mike, a lot of different things. And one thing that kind of triggered me and set me off was down the street, about 4 or 5 houses from where we stayed, there was a young couple, and they had about 3 or 4 kids. And the lady, I thought she was just the most beautiful lady in the world. You know, I'm 10 years old, she's in her 20s, but I just thought she was the most beautiful lady in the world. And her and her husband were having problems. They were having
Mm.
problems, and abuse was taking place in that household. And so much so that one day I remember coming home, and police and everything were down there, and coming to find out, the guy had murdered his wife.
Mm.
And it just took me aback. I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. I didn't know what to do, but I knew it wasn't I wasn't happy with it. And then there were
Right.
other things in the neighborhood. You know, I was an inquisitive young fella at the age of 10 or 11. And I think it happened because, like I said, my father had passed when I was 4. My mother raised us as a single mother. And there was a friend of the family who one day told me that I needed to be the man of the house. So I'm at 10 years old, 11 years old, and this grown man tells me I need to be the man of the house. And so there I am trying to figure out how to be the man of, of the house. And so I found myself kind of thinking differently than the typical 10-year-old or 11-year-old. So anyway, I remember, share this story. I remember going around the neighborhood just asking people, what would it take for you to be happy? What would it take for you to be happy? And the common response that I got was, if I had $1 million, I'd be happy. If I had $1 million, I'd be happy. And I said to myself, well, if we had $1 million, I'd be happy too. But then the next, but then the next question that came out of me was, well, what if we never have $1 million? Can we still be happy? And so from that day forward, I found myself looking for this recipe for happiness, Mike, this recipe for happiness. And that's what I wanted to find. And that's what I sought out to find. And then because it was something that was a part of me all those years, ultimately, best self living is that recipe that I came up with some 35, 40 years later.
And my next question is this: when it comes to best self living, what setbacks and hardships did you have to deal with to get to even get to that concept? I'm sure you had. What did you have to learn? What did you have to learn about yourself to get to that concept, to get that philosophy?
Okay, well, a number of different things. Let's see. What did I have to go through to come to the point of that concept? Well, here we go. So, I told you I've been on this journey for this recipe for happiness, right? And along the way, steps along the way in my life, things would happen that would play a part in me having transformation take place in my life. Okay, so I told you about the incident with the violence and abuse as a 10-year-old. Well, then as a teenager, for some reason or another, I became a shy teenager, right? So I was a shy teenager from the age of, let's say, 15 till almost 20. And I didn't like being shy because I have this twin brother and he's the outgoing twin. Now, get this. At first, he was labeled the bad twin and I was labeled the good twin. But I was basically labeled the good twin because I was the quiet twin.
Exactly.
And I didn't like being shy because he got all the girls. He would talk to the girls that I wanted to talk to, but was too afraid to talk to. And so anyway, about time I'm 19, I'm about to graduate from college, and I say, wait a minute, I'm about to be a grown man. And I should be able to talk to anybody, anytime about anything. Yes. Anyway, somehow I got introduced to a book called Your Erroneous Zone by Dr. Wayne Dyer, a book called Your Erroneous Zone. And I read that book. And in that book, it shared insight on how to get out of that cycle of shyness. And basically said, as long as you say you are shy, then you will behave in a shy manner. And as long as you behave in a shy manner, then you will continue to define yourself as shy. And so the cycle continues. And then I realized that the power, so I learned from there, was about the power in the word. And then later on, I moved to California to live with my brother, and he and I couldn't see eye to eye, and we were bumping heads. And so I ended up moving out. And that was a hurtful thing to me because this guy was my best friend growing up, and anything that we did together, we were successful at. But he left college 2 years before I did to join the service. And so while I was finishing up college, he had moved to San Diego because he was in the Navy out there. And so after I finished college, I moved out there to live with him. But his attitude and his mentality was different than mine, and we started bumping heads. And so I fell out with my brother, and I was angry and I was upset because there was something wrong with my brother as far as I was concerned. Okay. Right. So later on, I'm supposed to be telling you, is this good, Mike? We all right?
Oh yeah, be fine.
Okay. So I'm trying to, there's just steps along the way. So I got word of the power of the word, right? Then remember when I did the workshop, you can have it all. Then I got power of purpose and doing what you truly love to do, and how the universe will support you in it. Because get this, prior to me doing that workshop, I had made $5 an hour teaching tennis, Mike. $5 an hour. And so I said to myself, I'm doing what I enjoy doing, but I'm not making any money doing it. And so how am I going to do this? But this guy said, his name was Arnold Patton. He said, do what you truly love to do, and the universe will support you in it. You just have to be open and receptive to it. As a result of me being open and receptive to it, I started teaching tennis. I continued to teach tennis, making that $5. But I promise you this, within a couple of years, I went from making $5 an hour teaching tennis in Detroit to working for Arthur Ashe, Nick Bollettieri in their first inner city program in Newark, New Jersey, making $60,000 a year. Now,
Oh man,
back in the 80s, that was a nice piece of change.
that was a nice piece of change then.
Nice piece of change. And so that inspired me to stay on the path that I was on. Okay. So then again, later on, I actually attended an education corporation program called Landmark Forum. And in the Landmark Forum, they taught me something about communication, and they also taught me something about the power of choice. Okay. And so that helped transform my life. Well, fast forward, Mike. I'm teaching tennis. I've been teaching tennis about 15, 20 years. And one Saturday morning, I'm in the shower, and out of nowhere, this question pops up, Mike. The question pops up. And I'm like, what is this? But it stuck with me. It stuck with me. And I said, wait a minute. I don't know what this means or what to do with it, but it means something. And so I took the question, I pondered on it for a little while. And guess what I did? I used the question in my tennis program, and it transformed my tennis teaching. It transformed my tennis teaching.
Man.
It transformed my tennis teaching. And so when I got laid off, that was the program I was working on. The program I was working on is called Who You Being? Who are you being?
Who are
That's
you
right.
being?
Who are you being? But the short version is who you being. That's how I say it. Who you being? And so I used that question, and like I said, it actually transformed my tennis. And so I'm working on that question. I'm working on that question. I'm working on that question. I'm sharing this who you being concept with people. And then it seemed like it wasn't catching on. It wasn't catching on, and something was missing, and something was missing. And then one day, best self-living popped up. Being your best self, right? And then after best self-living popped up, then I was able to utilize who you being to support people in best self-living. And so that's how the program actually came